He proposed to mend her broken heart, hiding the fact he'd loved her all along. Imagine this, a woman shattered by betrayal, her heart in pieces, swearing off love forever. Enter her lifelong best friend, charming, dependable, the guy who's always been there. But tonight, under a canopy of twinkling stars, he drops to one knee with a ring that sparkles like hidden promises. "Marry me," he whispers, "and let me heal your wounds." What she doesn't know, he's been in love with her since their playground days, every laugh, every tear, fueling a passion he's buried deep. Will this proposal mend her, or unravel his secret forever? Stick around, things are about to get heart-poundingly intense. Hey story lover, welcome to the Narrative Hub, Reddit Stories. Believe me, this adventure gets wild, but it's only epic with you. Seriously, you make this possible. Want more stories? Greater adventure? Smash subscribe right now. Smash like. Comment below. Let's go. The rain hammered against the window like bullets, each drop echoing the fury in Maya's chest. Her fingers trembled as she crumpled the wedding invitation, her wedding invitation, that would never see the light of day. 3 weeks. 3 weeks until she was supposed to marry Derek, and now? Now she was staring at photos of him tangled up with her own sister on his phone, screenshots that burned themselves into her retinas like acid. "I trusted you," she whispered to the empty apartment, her voice cracking like brittle glass. The diamond engagement ring felt like a noose around her finger. She yanked it off, hurling it across the room where it skittered under the couch like a dying star. The knock at her door came at exactly the wrong moment, or maybe exactly the right one. "Go away," she called out, her voice thick with tears. "Maya, it's me." That voice. Deep, familiar, carrying the weight of 15 years of friendship. "I brought ice cream. And bourbon. Your choice." Despite everything, she almost smiled. "Almost. Since when do you drink bourbon, Anthony?" "Since my best friend's world imploded and I needed liquid courage for what I'm about to do." Something in his tone made her freeze. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and opened the door. Anthony stood there in his perfectly pressed shirt, rain-soaked and breathless, holding a pint of cookie dough ice cream in one hand and a small velvet box in the other. What is that?" she stammered. His dark eyes, usually so calm and composed, burned with something she'd never seen before. "It's a solution." Anthony stepped inside, setting the ice cream on her coffee table with deliberate precision. The velvet box remained in his grip like a loaded weapon. "Maya, sit down." "I don't want to sit down. I want you to explain why you're holding." "Because I'm about to ask you to marry me." The words hit her like a physical blow. She staggered backward, her hand flying to her throat. "You're what?" "Marry me." His voice was steady now, rock solid, but his knuckles were white around the box. "Not for love. Not for forever. Just for now. For you." She stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "Anthony, you've lost your mind. Completely, utterly." "Have I?" He opened the box with a soft click. Inside sat the most beautiful ring she'd ever seen, a vintage sapphire surrounded by diamonds, delicate and timeless. Nothing like the gaudy rock Derek had given her. This ring whispered instead of shouted, promised instead of demanded. Think about it, Maya. You've got a venue booked, vendors paid, guests flying in from 3 states. Your parents already bought their outfits. Your grandmother's dress is being altered. But her voice wavered. "So, let's not waste it." He took a step closer, and she caught a whiff of his cologne, something woody and warm that had always made her feel safe. "Let's give your family the wedding they're expecting. Let's show Derek and your sister that you're not broken. That you're not alone." "That's insane." "Is it?" His eyes searched her face with an intensity that made her stomach flip. "Maya, I've watched you pour everything into relationships with men who don't deserve you. I've picked up the pieces every time they broke your heart. I've been your safety net for 15 years, and I'm good at it. Let me do it officially." She sank onto the couch, her mind reeling. A marriage of convenience? Like we're living in a Jane Austen novel. Exactly like that. He knelt in front of her, and something flickered across his face, something desperate and hungry that was gone so fast she wondered if she'd imagined it. I'm offering you a shield, Maya. A way to hold your head high while you heal. No pressure, no expectations. Just partnership. The ring caught the lamplight, throwing tiny rainbows across the wall. It was perfect. Too perfect. Why would you do this for me? For just a moment, his careful composure cracked. His jaw tightened, his breathing quickened, and she saw something raw and vulnerable flash in his eyes. Then the mask slipped back into place. Because you're my best friend, he said simply. And I can't stand to watch you suffer anymore. Maya's fingers traced the edge of the velvet box. 3 hours ago, she'd been planning her suicide, not literally, but the death of every dream she'd ever had about love. Now Anthony was offering her resurrection wrapped in white gold and promises. What would people say? They'd say you're the luckiest woman alive. His smile was crooked, self-deprecating. Come on, Maya. I'm a catch. Stable job, excellent credit score, I can cook actual meals instead of just heating up takeout. Despite everything, she laughed. You forgot devastatingly handsome and annoyingly perfect. I was being modest. But something shifted in his expression when she said those words. His eyes darkened, his lips parted slightly, and for a heart-stopping second, she wondered what it would be like to kiss him. Really kiss him. Not the friendly pecks they'd shared on birthdays and holidays, but something deeper, hungrier. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it sent heat spiraling through her chest. Anthony, she began, but he was already sliding the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. Say yes, Maya. Let me take care of you. The ring felt warm against her skin, like it belonged there. Like it had always belonged there. She looked up at his face, this face she'd known since they were 12 years old, when he defended her against Jenny Morrison's cruel comments about her thrift store clothes. He'd gotten a black eye for his trouble, but he'd smiled at her afterward like it was the best day of his life. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. The smile that broke across his face was blinding. Pure joy, relief, and something else, something that made her pulse race and her cheeks burn. Before she could analyze it, he was pulling her into his arms, spinning her around her tiny living room like they were dancing to music only he could hear. You won't regret this, he murmured against her hair. I swear to you, Maya. I will never hurt you. As he held her, breathing in her scent like he was trying to memorize it, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this proposal than friendship. The way he touched her, reverent, desperate, the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. But that was ridiculous. This was Anthony, her best friend, her safe harbor. He was doing this out of kindness, nothing more. Wasn't he? 3 weeks later, Maya stood in her grandmother's dress, staring at her reflection in the bridal suite mirror. The ivory silk hugged her curves like it was made for her, which it had been 50 years ago, for a different bride, a different love story. You look perfect, her mother whispered, adjusting the vintage veil with trembling fingers. I never imagined that I'd be marrying Anthony instead of Derek? Maya's voice was surprisingly steady. Neither did I. Her mother's eyes met hers in the mirror. Sweetheart, are you sure about this? I mean, Anthony is wonderful, but... But what? But he's not Derek. The name tasted bitter on her tongue. Good. Derek was a mistake. Anthony is. What was Anthony? Safe. Reliable. The man who brought her soup when she was sick and remembered her coffee order and never, ever made her feel like she wasn't enough. The man who looked at her sometimes like she was the sun and the moon and every star in between. Anthony is right, she finished. A soft knock interrupted them. Maya? It's time. Anthony's voice, warm and steady through the door. Her stomach fluttered. Nerves, she told herself. Just wedding nerves. She opened the door to find him standing there in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, and her breath caught in her throat. She'd seen Anthony in formal wear before, but this was different. The way the jacket emphasized his broad shoulders, the way his dark hair was styled just slightly messier than usual, the way his eyes went wide when he saw her. God, Maya. His voice was rough, almost broken. You're so beautiful. Heat flooded her cheeks. You clean up pretty well yourself. They stared at each other for a long moment, the air between them crackling with something electric and dangerous. Then her father appeared, offering his arm and breaking the spell. Ready, sweetheart? Was she? Maya looked back at Anthony, at this man who was about to become her husband for all the wrong reasons, or maybe all the right ones, and nodded. I'm ready. He planned all this, her cousin whispered during the processional. In 3 weeks. Planned all this, her cousin whispered during the processional. In 3 weeks. Maya wondered the same thing. How had Anthony pulled this off? How had he known exactly what she wanted, down to the specific shade of blush roses in her bouquet? As she walked down the aisle, Anthony's eyes never left her face. The look in them made her knees weak, intense, devoted, hungry. Like she was the only woman in the world. Like he was drowning and she was air. When she reached the altar, he took her hands in his, and she felt the tremor in his fingers. Nerves. Even Anthony got nervous. The officiant began the ceremony, but Maya barely heard the words. She was lost in Anthony's eyes, in the way his thumb traced gentle circles on her palm, in the smile that seemed to hold 1,000 secrets. Anthony, do you take Maya to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, as long as you both shall live? I do. The words came out fierce, absolute. Not the careful, measured response she'd expected, but something that sounded like a battle cry. Like a declaration of war against anyone who would dare hurt her. Maya, do you take Anthony to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, as long as you both shall live? She looked at this man, really looked at him. The boy who'd shared his lunch money when she'd forgotten hers. The teenager who'd taught her to drive in his beat-up Honda. The man who'd held her while she cried over every broken heart, never once saying, I told you so. The man who'd just given her the wedding of her dreams and asked for nothing in return. I do. When he kissed her, it wasn't the polite peck she'd expected. It was soft, sweet, and lingering, a kiss that tasted like promises and felt like coming home. When they finally broke apart, his forehead rested against hers, and she could feel his heart hammering against his chest. Mrs. Willis, he whispered, and the name sent shivers down her spine. Mr. Willis, she whispered back, and watched something dangerous flicker in his dark eyes. As they turned to face their guests, Maya caught sight of Derek in the back row, Derek, who'd had the audacity to show up uninvited. He looked stunned, devastated, like he couldn't believe she'd moved on so quickly. But it was the woman standing beside Derek who made Maya's blood freeze. Her sister Emma, wearing a dress that was entirely too white for someone attending her sister's wedding. Emma, who was staring at Anthony like she'd just seen a ghost. Emma, who suddenly looked terrified. The reception was in full swing when Emma cornered Maya by the champagne fountain. Her sister's face was pale, her hands shaking as she grabbed Maya's arm. Maya, we need to talk. If this is about Derek. It's not about Derek. Emma's voice was sharp, desperate. It's about Anthony. Something cold settled in Maya's stomach. What about Anthony? Emma glanced around the crowded ballroom, then pulled Maya into a quiet corner behind the dessert table. Do you remember senior year? When I was dating that guy from college, Jake Patterson. Emma, what does this have to do with? Anthony beat him up. Maya blinked. What? Jake came to pick me up for a date, and Anthony was there. He took one look at Jake and just lost it. I mean, completely lost it. Broke Jake's nose. Gave him a black eye. Scared him so badly that Jake transferred schools. The world tilted sideways. That's impossible. Anthony would never. Wouldn't he? Emma's eyes were wide, frightened. Maya, think about it. Every guy you've ever dated. They all had the same story. Anthony threatened them. Warned them to stay away from you. Some of them were terrified of him. You're lying. But even as she said it, memories were surfacing. Brad Wilson, who'd asked her to prom and then mysteriously changed his mind. Kevin Nash, who'd ghosted her after 3 perfect dates. Tyler Reed, who'd broken up with her via text, claiming he didn't want any trouble. I'm not lying. Ask him yourself. Emma's grip tightened. Maya, Anthony has been in love with you since we were kids. Obsessively, possessively in love. He's been sabotaging your relationships for years. The champagne flute slipped from Maya's fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Across the ballroom, Anthony's head snapped toward the sound, his eyes immediately finding hers with laser precision. The concern on his face, the way he started moving toward her through the crowd. And Derek. Maya's voice was barely a whisper. Emma's face crumpled. Derek and it wasn't real. Anthony paid him $50,000 to cheat on you, publicly, where you'd be sure to find out. He wanted you broken, Maya. He wanted you desperate. He orchestrated all of this. The room spun. Maya grabbed the wall for support, her wedding dress suddenly feeling like a straitjacket. No, that's insane. Anthony wouldn't. He loves me. Yes, he does. That's the problem. Emma's voice was barely audible over the band's jazz rendition of At Last. He loves you so much he's willing to destroy your life to have you. Anthony was closer now, weaving through the dancing couples with predatory grace. His dark eyes were locked on Maya's face, reading every micro-expression with the expertise of someone who'd been studying her for 15 years. Maya? His voice was soft, concerned. Sweetheart, you look pale. Are you feeling all right? She stared at him, this man she'd just married, this man she trusted more than anyone in the world. The boy who'd given her his jacket when she was cold. The teenager who'd driven her to the hospital when she'd broken her wrist. The man who'd just promised to love and protect her until death do them part. The man who might have orchestrated the worst betrayal of her life. I need some air, she managed. Of course. He reached for her arm, and she flinched away. Something flickered across his face, hurt, confusion, and then something darker. Maya, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. The lie tasted like ash. I just need a moment. She pushed through the crowd, desperate for escape, but Anthony was right behind her. Always right behind her. Her shadow, her protector, her puppet master. As she burst through the doors onto the venue's terrace, one question echoed in her mind like a death knell. How long had he been pulling her strings? The terrace was empty except for the fairy lights strung between the trees, casting dancing shadows on Maya's face as she gripped the stone railing. Her wedding dress pooled around her like spilled milk, and for a moment, she felt like Rapunzel, beautiful, trapped, and finally seeing her tower for what it really was. Maya. Anthony's voice behind her was careful, controlled. Talk to me. She didn't turn around. Couldn't. If she looked at his face, those eyes that had always been her safe harbor, she might break completely. Emma told me something interesting, she said to the darkness beyond the lights. She heard his sharp intake of breath. Emma has a talent for saying things she shouldn't. Is it true? The words came out strangled. About Derek. About the money. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. When he finally spoke, His voice was barely above a whisper. Yes. The simple word hit her like a physical blow. She doubled over, her hands bracing against the railing as her world crumbled around her. Maya, please. Don't. She spun to face him, and the look on his face nearly undid her. He looked devastated, terrified, like a man watching his entire world burn. Don't say anything. Not yet. I need to understand. He stood perfectly still, his hands clenched at his sides. In the soft light, she could see the boy she'd known, vulnerable, desperate, achingly beautiful. And the man she was only now beginning to see, calculated, obsessive, dangerous. How many others? Her voice was steady now, cold as winter rain. How many of my relationships did you sabotage? Maya. How many? His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. All of them. The confession hung in the air like smoke. Maya felt something fracture inside her chest, not her heart, but something deeper. Her sense of reality. Her understanding of who she was, who she'd been for the past 15 years. Since when? Since we were 15. His voice was raw, broken. Since Tommy Morrison asked you to the spring dance and I realized I'd rather die than watch you love someone else. 15 years. She laughed, but it came out like a sob. 15 years of you controlling my life, and I never even knew. I was protecting you. From what? From being happy? From finding love? From being hurt? The words exploded out of him, all his careful control finally shattering. Do you have any idea what it was like? Watching you fall for men who didn't deserve you. Men who would have broken your heart eventually anyway. That wasn't your choice to make. Wasn't it? He took a step toward her, his eyes blazing. I've loved you since we were 12 years old, Maya. Loved you through every crush, every boyfriend, every time you came crying to me about another man who didn't see how perfect you are. I've been here. I've always been here. As my friend. As the man who would have given you everything. His voice cracked on the last word. The man who memorized your coffee order and your favorite flowers and the way you like your eggs. The man who learned to cook because you mentioned once that you loved homemade meals. The man who bought this ring 3 years ago and carried it in his wallet like a prayer. He pulled out his wallet with shaking hands, showing her the small velvet box tucked inside, worn soft from being handled, like a talisman. I've been ready to propose to you for 3 years, Maya. Waiting for the right moment, the right words, the right circumstances. So you created them. The pieces were falling into place now, forming a picture so twisted it made her sick. You paid Derek to break my heart so you could swoop in and save me. Yes. And if I hadn't been desperate enough to say yes? If I'd turned you down? Something flickered across his face, something cold and determined that made her blood freeze. But you didn't. The implication hung between them like a blade. Maya stared at this man she'd thought she knew, seeing him clearly for the first time. The obsession burning in his dark eyes. The possessive way his gaze traveled over her body. The careful way he was positioning himself between her and the door back to the party. What would you have done, Anthony? If I'd said no? He didn't answer. Didn't need to. The truth was written in every line of his body, every calculated breath. He would have found another way, another scheme, another manipulation. Because men like Anthony Willis didn't take no for an answer. I want an annulment. The words fell into the night air like stones into still water. Anthony flinched as if she'd struck him, his face going white in the fairy light glow. Maya, please. Don't. She backed away from him, her wedding dress rustling against the stone railing. Don't say my name. Don't touch me. Don't pretend this is anything other than what it is. And what is it? His voice was dangerously quiet. Violation. The word hit him like a physical blow. He staggered backward, his hand flying to his chest. Don't be ridiculous. I never touched you. You violated my choices. The words came out in a rush, 15 years of manipulation crystallizing into white-hot fury. You violated my agency, my autonomy, my right to make my own mistakes and find my own happiness. You turned my entire adult life into a lie. Tears were streaming down his face now, and part of her, the part that had loved him as a friend, wanted to comfort him. But the larger part, the part that was finally seeing clearly, felt only disgust. "I love you," he whispered. "No, you don't." Her voice was steel. "You love the idea of me. You love owning me. You love being the hero in your own sick fantasy where I'm the helpless princess who needs saving. But you don't love me, Anthony. Because if you loved me, you would have wanted me to be happy. Even if it wasn't with you." "I tried," his voice broke. "God, Maya, I tried to let you go. But every time I saw you with someone else, every time you smiled at another man the way you should smile at me, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't function. The thought of you in someone else's arms, in someone else's bed. So you made sure it would never happen." Yes, the admission tore out of him like a battle cry. "Yes, I sabotaged them all. Yes, I paid Derek. Yes, I orchestrated everything. Because I couldn't live in a world where you belonged to someone else." The honesty was somehow worse than the lies. At least the lies had let her believe in his goodness. This raw, possessive obsession was something else entirely. "Then you never deserved me in the first place." She started to walk past him toward the door, but his hand shot out, gripping her wrist with bruising force. "Where are you going?" Something in his voice, desperate, unhinged, made her look at him more carefully. His pupils were dilated, his breathing rapid and shallow. The careful mask he'd worn for 15 years had completely fallen away, revealing something wild and dangerous underneath. "I'm going home." "This is your home now." His grip tightened. "You're my wife." "Not for long." "Forever." The word came out like a growl. "You said I do, Maya. You're mine now. Till death do us part." Fear, cold and sharp, lanced through her chest. This wasn't the Anthony she knew. This was someone else entirely. Someone who might be capable of anything. "Let go of me." "No." His other hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing away tears. She didn't realize she'd been crying. "I've waited too long for this. Loved you too much. I won't let you leave me. Not now. Not ever." The fairy lights cast shadows across his face, transforming his familiar features into something alien and terrifying. Maya realized with crystal clarity that she was alone on a dark terrace with a man who had just admitted to 15 years of psychological manipulation and who clearly had no intention of letting her go. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she calculated distances. The door back to the party was 10 feet away. Her phone was in her purse inside. Her family, her friends, the safety of witnesses, all just beyond her reach. "Anthony," she said carefully, "you're scaring me." Something flickered in his eyes at that, surprise, maybe even hurt. As if he couldn't understand why his devoted love would be frightening. "I would never hurt you," he whispered. "Everything I've done, it's been to protect you." "Then prove it. Let me go." For a long moment, they stared at each other. Then, slowly, his hands dropped away from her. Maya didn't hesitate, she ran. But as she reached the door, his voice followed her, soft and absolutely certain. "You can run, Maya. But you can't hide from the truth. You married me tonight. And deep down, you know why." She froze, her hand on the door handle. "Because part of you has always known," he continued, his voice getting closer. "Part of you has always wondered what it would be like. To be loved completely. Obsessively. To be someone's entire world." Her breath caught in her throat because, God help her, he was right. There had been moments over the years when his devotion had felt intoxicating. When the intensity of his attention had made her feel like the most important person alive. "I'm the only man who will ever love you the way you deserve to be loved, Maya. Completely. Unconditionally. Forever." She turned around slowly, and the look on his face nearly undid her. Gone was the unhinged desperation from moments before. In its place was the Anthony she remembered, gentle, devoted, heartbreakingly beautiful in his certainty. "So here's your choice," he said softly. "You can run. Get the annulment. Spend the rest of your life wondering, what if? Settling for men who will love you halfway, carelessly, temporarily." He took a step toward her, and she didn't back away. "Or you can stay. Let me love you the way I've always wanted to. Let me worship you the way you were meant to be worshipped. Let me be yours, completely and forever." "And my freedom?" "What freedom?" His smile was sad, knowing. "You've never been free, Maya. Not from me. Even when you were with other men, part of you was always comparing them to me, wondering why they didn't know you the way I do, why they didn't love you the way I do." The truth of it hit her like a physical blow. He was right. God help her, he was right. "I could learn to forgive the manipulation," he continued, reading her face with expert precision. "The lies, the control, they came from love. Twisted love, maybe, but love nonetheless. The question is, can you forgive yourself for wanting it?" Maya closed her eyes, her wedding dress heavy around her ankles, her grandmother's ring burning against her finger. When she opened them again, Anthony was holding out his hand. 1 year later. Maya Willis stood in the kitchen of their new house, morning light streaming through windows she'd chosen, illuminating countertops he'd insisted on. The ring on her finger, his ring, the one he'd carried for 3 years, caught the light and threw rainbows across the wall. "Good morning, wife." His voice, warm and sleep-rough, made her pulse quicken the way it had every morning for the past year. Anthony appeared behind her, arms wrapping around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. His lips found the sensitive spot behind her ear that he'd mapped with devotional precision. "Coffee's ready," she murmured, melting into his embrace despite herself. In a minute." His hands splayed across her stomach, possessive and gentle. "I love you." "I know." She did know. She felt it in every carefully prepared meal, every protective gesture, every time he looked at her like she was his religion. The intensity of it should have terrified her. Sometimes it did. But mostly it felt like being cherished. "Any regrets?" he asked, the question he'd asked every morning since their wedding night. She turned in his arms, looking up at this man who had systematically dismantled her life in order to rebuild it around himself. The obsession in his dark eyes hadn't dimmed. If anything, it had grown stronger. But there was something else there now too. Gratitude. Wonder. The look of a man who couldn't quite believe he'd gotten everything he'd ever wanted. "Ask me again tomorrow," she said, the same answer she gave every morning. But as he kissed her, soft and sweet and completely devoted, Maya knew the truth. She'd made her choice that night on the terrace, not when she'd run back inside to face their guests, not when she'd stood before the assembled crowd and announced their intention to make their marriage real. She'd made her choice the moment she'd looked into Anthony Willis's obsessive, adoring eyes and realized that part of her had been waiting 15 years for him to stop pretending to be safe. Because sometimes the most dangerous cage was the one that felt like home. And sometimes you didn't want to be free.